I remember the first time that I ever told a joke publicly. I was a freshman in high school, and my math teacher said, Adam, read the next definition in the book. And I said, circumference, the distance around something. Circumference, not to be confused with circumcision. It's a pity laugh. It's not a great joke, but to a bunch of 15-year-olds, comedian of the year. There was this really hot girl sitting next to me, and she leaned over, and she's like, you're pretty funny, Bush. I lived off that emotionally for a year. I was talking about this joke to my wife, Diana, the other day, and she goes, a year? Because you're 39 and you're still talking about it. I was on stage one time, and I said, I'm from Louisiana, and some drunk girl in the front row goes, I'm from Louisiana! I said, I'm from a little town called Minden. Where's that? It's in Louisiana. Hey, I'm from Louisiana! I'm honestly, I'm not like real great at like a setup and a quick punchline. I'm better at like finding the humor in experiences that I have and telling stories. Like I travel a lot for work, and I've noticed that every time you go to a Starbucks in a different state, they have a mug that is state specific, celebrating the things they want you to remember about that state. If you go to California, you get a mug with a wave on it. You go to New York, the Statue of Liberty. Oklahoma, tornado. I said that joke in New York one time, and this guy came up to me afterwards, and he said, does Oklahoma really have a lot of tornadoes? And I said, no, not really. That week, we had 17 tornadoes. Or like this, several years ago, I went over to my grandmother's house, and she was very clearly watching the movie The Dark Knight. And I said, Grandma, I love this movie. You're watching Batman. And she looked at me and she goes, this is a movie about that detective fellow. I said, yeah, Grandma, that's Commissioner Gordon. He's Batman's friend. This is Batman. No. They're trying to catch that guy who wears all the white makeup. That's the Joker, Grandma. He's Batman's arch nemesis. This is Batman. No. A couple minutes later, Batman pops in and she goes, well, look at there, it's Batman. When you're a comic, you're trying to find what's unique about you, what makes you stand out. One of the things that makes me stand out is I'm a cancer survivor. In fact, this year I celebrate 35 years cancer-free, so that's pretty exciting. People will say, what kind of cancer did you have, Adam? And I'll say, I had kidney cancer. And they'll say, ooh, that sounds bad. And I'll say, ooh, they're all bad. Here's how we found out I was sick. When I was 3 years old, I would ask my mom for something to eat, and she made me a bowl of cereal, and I took like 2 bites, and I was like, I'm full. She's like, you're not full. Stop messing around. Finish your food. Later that year, the doctor diagnosed me with a tumor that was so large, he said, it's pushing into his stomach, and it's probably making him feel full. So I was right. When I was diagnosed, the doctor gave me a 98.6% chance that I would die. Is the 0.6 necessary? I do have some side effects from the cancer and from the just the treatment. I can't do a wingspan. Thank you. Like I just can't put my arms out like a bird, I guess. Is that what that's based on? Growing up, we flew a lot. So I'd be in the airport, and that's when they used to make you do a wingspan, and like they'd do the wand, you know. And I think, why are you making everyone do this? It hurts us all so bad. A few years later, I was like, oh, it's just me. Okay. So several years ago, I had the flu really bad, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, anything else I should know about? And I said, I can't do a wingspan. He said, show me. I was like, okay, this is real, people. This is how it works. I did this. I did that for the doctor, and he does this. Oh my. Do that again. A couple weeks later, I saw that doctor at Target with his wife, and I heard him say, "That's not what I was telling you about." My calves are underdeveloped. My calf muscles are just non-existent. And people would ask me, like, if I was wearing shorts, like, what's going on? I'd be like, oh, it's from the chemotherapy from cancer. And so a few years ago, I was back at the hospital that treated me for cancer. And they're like, any other side effects that are bothering you? And I was like, no, just got the calf thing. And they said, oh, that's not from the cancer. That's just your body. Okay. A couple weeks ago, we had a big ice storm here in Tulsa, and I fell like super hard on the ice, and my back was hurting so badly. So I went to the doctor, but we've moved recently, and so I had to find a new doctor. And I'm going through my medical history, and he's like, all right, I know you had cancer, you don't have a kidney, like, what else is going on? Anything I should know about? And I was like, well, I got drop foot, I can't walk on my feet, I can't sit on my legs, I lose my balance a lot, my calf muscles are underdeveloped, my skin gets itchy if it's wet. He says, okay, and I say, I'm not done. He said, I know, I just got to go get another chart to fill out. Never filled the first one up before. So when I was 17, we were in Louisiana, and my parents said we're going to move to Tulsa. And I would tell my friends about it, and my friends would say, oh, hey, we know Tulsa. Like, there's a whole season of the show Friends where Chandler moves to Tulsa, or works there. And he calls Tulsa the Paris of Oklahoma. So needless to say, I was a bit underwhelmed when I got here. Which, sidebar, I remember seeing the very first promo for Friends, and I was like, a show with a stupid title like Friends? I'd give it a week. 20 years later, I'm showing it to my daughter, Luna. I'm like, that's Monica. She makes $8 an hour working in a crappy diner, but she can afford that $1 million apartment. It works out. At first, I had grown up in Louisiana, so all my friends were back there. So every weekend forever, I just would drive back to Louisiana, hang out with my friends. And one night I get into town, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, dang it, I forgot to ask anyone if I could stay the night at their house. And then I remembered that my friend's dad was out of town, and I knew I could get into his house because nobody locks their doors in Louisiana. We just learned a long time ago that thieves aren't interested in stealing framed, cross-stitched Bible verses. Or those singing fish you hang on the wall. So I pull up to his house, and his truck's in the driveway. I'm like, dang it, maybe I'm wrong. All right, I got 3 options. Option 1, I knock on the door, wake him up. It'll be awkward, but he'll let me stay at the house. Option 2, I break into his house. I find a bed to sleep in. Problem is, in the morning, if he's confused or thinks I'm someone else, there's a very good chance I'm going to get shot in the face. Louisiana's a shoot now, ask never kind of state. Or option 3, I break into his house. I go up to where he and his wife sleep. I flip on the lights. If he is in there, he'll be so confused and discombobulated, I'll be able to run. Nobody will be the wiser. Option 3 is really smart. If you're 17 and an idiot. So I go with option 3. I break into his house. I creak up the steps. Pitch black darkness. I look for the light switch, and I count down internally. 3, 2, 1. I flip it on. I wish I could communicate to you the sheer terror that flooded my body as I found myself in that moment staring into the eyes of a man standing directly in front of me. I screamed like a little girl. I took off running like I've never run before because, let's be honest, I've never run before. Mid-run, I stop, and I go back to his room to confirm my suspicion that the man standing in front of me was nothing more than a full-length mirror. I scared the crap out of myself. Eventually, we put down roots here. My mom and dad were working at a church. One time we were having breakfast, and she looked at my dad. She said, I wish we would have named one of our boys a biblical name. I mean, I guess you could have named me Jesus. When I was in high school, we had a family friend named Bruce. And Bruce got really sick, and he was in the hospital, and it wasn't looking very good. And I came down one morning for breakfast, and my mom was in the kitchen. She closed the refrigerator door dramatically, and she said, "Honey, last night, Bruce died." I was like, "Oh, man, this sucks." She goes, "Yeah, he died. Luckily, the doctors were able to revive him. He's doing much better now." That was 20 years ago. Bruce is still alive. One of the things my parents always instilled in me was a love for travel. A couple of years ago, actually a few years after the resurrection of Bruce. I was in Los Angeles and I found out Bill Cosby was performing, and so I went and got a ticket. It was on the front row, and when I walked in, I was like looking around, and it was like this really nice theater, really swanky part of LA, and just 2,000 well-to-do couples just dressed to the nines. So I'm sitting there, and Cosby comes out, and he says somewhere at the beginning of his set, "Anyone here not married?" 2,000 people. I'm the only person that went, "Woo!" He said, "Are you dating anyone?" I said, "Yeah, I got a girlfriend." He said, "Are you going to marry her?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Have you talked to your father about it?" And I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" And I said, "He's dead." He goes, "That'd make it pretty hard to talk to him then, wouldn't it?" He made me a big part of the show, just like throughout the whole thing. He would just like refer to me in a bit or give me advice through a bit or something like that. And you better believe, when I got home, I told that story every chance I got. Like, it got to the point where my friends were like, "We get it. You talked to Cosby. Your dad's dead. Get over it." Obviously, a few years later, everything came out about Bill Cosby, and he's not a great guy. And I'm watching the news report, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm never going to be able to tell that story again. I didn't end up marrying that girl mainly because I didn't want to look at my wife for the rest of my life and think of Bill Cosby. But a few years later, I met a girl named Diana. And I met Di at work, and instantly I was super attracted to her. She's beautiful, so cool, way out of my league. Like, if she's the NBA, I'm, me. Work had us working on projects, long hours, late nights, and normally I'd be like, this is really annoying, but back then I was like, this is the best. I'd want to call her, just to kind of talk to her, but I'd have to make an excuse, like a work-related excuse. The problem was I wouldn't come up with the reason before she answered the phone, so I'd end up saying something like, "Just wanted to remind you, work starts at 9. Just like every day." After a while, though, I started to feel like maybe she liked me too. And one night she said that she was going to see the band Ben Harper and the Innocent Criminals. And I was like, I was thinking about going to that show too, which was true ever since she mentioned it. So we're standing in the back of the auditorium watching the show, and I got the courage up to reach down and hold her hand. And she looked at me and she said, "What took you so long?" We had a pretty strict rule at work that, we couldn't date. So from that moment on, we were secretly dating. Giving each other flirty little looks during a meeting, leaving notes that only we could decipher. We were like dating ninjas, but with a lot more kissing and a lot less killing. Like pretty much no killing. I'd like to say that our dating relationship was smooth sailing, but about a year and a half into it, I broke up with her. It's not that I didn't like her anymore. I just was, I was a young guy. I was confused, didn't know if we were going to get married, that sort of thing. And she knew, she was certain we were going to get married. She called me one day and she said, "Are you telling me honestly that we're never going to get married?" And I said, "Listen! We are never, ever, ever getting back together. Diana, we are never getting married. 5 months later, we got married. This year, we celebrate 11 years of marriage. I'm really excited. About 3 years ago, we found out that we were pregnant. Di was pregnant. I was not. Overall, the pregnancy was pretty easy for me. We had one scare right at the end. We had to have an emergency C-section. And they said, we got to do an epidural right now or we're not going to be able to do it. And so it's just this insane moment at the hospital. And they have her sitting on the edge of the bed. And I'm like facing her this way, sitting in a chair lower than her. And I'm trying to help her arch her back. And I'm just trying to be there for her. The contractions are crazy. It's just like the most intense moment I've ever been a part of. The doctor is behind her administering the epidural. And he looks down at my chart and he says, Adam, you work as a storyteller? Tell me, what makes a good story? I don't know. How about the one about the doctor who doesn't know how to read the room? But we did it. She gave birth to my favorite kiddo, Luna Jo. I love her so much. I will say this. There are things people don't tell you. One of those is that there are a lot of hippie trends out there that people try to push on you. This is a real one. When your kid's born, don't name them. Wait till they're old enough to name themselves. If we all did that, you know how many people out there would be named Spider-Man? First day of kindergarten would just be like this classroom full of Peter Parkers. Except there'd be that one kid in the corner who named himself Voldemort. You want to stay away from that kid. I told that joke on stage one time, just around the corner, and I said Voldemort, and someone in the back of the room goes, "Too soon!" I'm sorry, sir, are you mourning the death of a fictional wizard? Speaking of superhero movies, I've been watching a lot of Marvel films and just like superhero films, and I have decided that I have one beef with them. Why is it that in every superhero film, the main method of mass communication to the public is still the local newspaper? No one's reading the paper. Like, I used to throw papers, and like our clientele was 75 and up. The newspaper business is literally a dying industry. You know how I know? Because every week I would throw a couple less papers because those people had died over the weekend. Okay, you don't like that joke. That's fine. I know, could go either way. Some of you are like, hey, I read the paper. I'm just gonna let that one sink in. So there's a lot of decisions you have to make as a parent, obviously. You know, vaccinations, that's like the big hot button issue right at the beginning. Do you vaccinate your kid or not? So we go to our pediatrician, Dr. Henley. We call him Dr. T-shirt. He gets it. And we're like, Dr. Henley, do we vaccinate? And he goes, well, obviously you got to make that decision yourself. So just, do your research, but be aware of who you're listening to. All right, a lot of actors, celebrities, athletes out there. They're writing a lot of articles, making videos, and they're not medical professionals. Robert De Niro, he has a lot to say. A lot of stuff from Robert De Niro. He's a great actor. Loved Meet the Parents. But he's not a doctor. So, just whoever you're listening to, just make sure you read up on the author, whatever celebrity it is, whether it be Robert De Niro. Again, thought he was great in Heat. But, he's not a medical professional. So, just be cognizant of who you're listening to. Maybe it's Robert De Niro. Thought he was great in The Irishman. He's not a doctor. So celebrity, athlete, spokespeople, whether it be Robert De Niro. I left. I was like, I don't know anything more about vaccinations, but I'm fairly certain my pediatrician does not like Robert De Niro. One thing I like about having a kid is that we get to watch a lot of Disney movies. I'm a big Disney and Pixar fan, and I've decided that my favorite film is Finding Nemo because I like it when the title of the movie is also the end of the movie. I wasn't going to tell that joke tonight because nobody laughed at it last night. And Diana, my wife, has for months now been saying, that joke is stupid. It's not funny, which means it's not a joke. And now I'm just gonna do it more. The thing about kids that I'm learning, is how much smarter she is than I expected so early. Like every night we put Luna down with a bottle, which, by the way, put her down is a terrible way to communicate your child's bedtime. Every night we put her down with a bottle, and she's learned that there's a Nest Cam in her room that we can see her with. And so the other night, about an hour after she's supposed to be asleep, I look at the Nest Cam, and she's just holding the empty bottle towards the camera. Like this house has bottle service or something. I mean, it worked. One of the things that's really cool about having a kid is I worked in children's television. Several years ago, my buddy Steven and I, we wrote this television show for preschoolers called Pete and Penelope, and it's about a bunch of puppet characters that hang out in this treehouse that comes alive every time they step inside. And a network bought it from us, and we produced the first season last year. And one of the episodes I wrote was about all the characters going camping. And so I was like, well, I got to get a bunch of props for camping. You know who doesn't want you to buy their stuff for a preschool puppet show? Guys who run an army surplus store. I walk in there and just I'm grabbing stuff that'll just work for the show, and I throw it up on the counter, and the guy behind the counter is so old he looks like he parachuted to work. And he... And he looks at me and he goes, why are you buying this? Which is an amazing question for any retail establishment. I can't imagine going to Target to get some toilet paper and they're like, what are you doing? Get this out of here. You get out of here. He picks up this little green pouch and he goes, do you know what this is? And I said, I don't. He goes, this is a medic's bag. It would have held a tourniquet to tie off a soldier's appendage that had been blown off on the battlefield. And I was like, cool. I'm going to make it a hedgehog's backpack. Anybody like to go camping here? Ushers, please remove these people. I hate camping. I've got a group of friends that every year they go camping and climb a mountain. I'm like, what are you doing up there? They said, we get to the top and the goal is just to be... I'm like, cool, I'll be here when you get back. My buddy Gary said, you want to go on a fun trip? I said, yes. He said, great, we start training on Monday. I'm like, I don't remember having to train for vacation. We drive to Durango, Colorado, which is this little town that's still stuck in the Old West. They have a general store there, not as a joke. We got to board this train to get into the woods, and train stops, and this guy gets out and just starts throwing all of our bags into the woods. He's like, finding your stuff is the first part of the adventure. Gary says, all right, it's 4 miles that way. I'm like, what? They didn't drop us off at the campsite? What kind of jacked up business is this? It's like if I buy an airplane ticket to Hawaii and they drop me off in California and like, we pretty much got you there. So we start hiking. I got this 45-pound bag on my back that's as tall as I am tall. About an hour into it, I'm like, oh, this is why you guys have been doing P90X every night for 3 months. At one point, I took my bag off and I traded it with my wife. That's the kind of husband I am. I'm not even sorry about it. I'm like dying. She's like, feels good to break a sweat. We hike for 6 hours. We get to the campsite and I'm like, I gotta poop. So now I'm walking through the woods with a stick like I'm a freaking caveman looking for a Mother Nature-made toilet. And I find this tree that's got these 2 roots sticking out that are kind of high. It's like kind of perfect for my butt cheeks. So I'm like digging. I'm like, how deep does this hole need to be? I don't know how much poop is inside there. Eventually my stick, like it hits something. I'm like, what's going on? And I pull it up to reveal my greatest fear I didn't know I had. It's a used tampon. I wish I could say that was the last time I saw a tampon, but the next day there was this wild sheep walking around with it hanging out of his mouth. So I finished going to the bathroom, I'm pulling on my pants, and I look over and realize I have walked so deeply into the woods, I'm actually really close to this other campsite, and there's this family of 4 just looking at me with their mouths open. I'm like, that is something you will never unsee. I get back to the campsite, and I'm like, Gary, it's getting kind of cold. I thought it was going to be hot. And he goes, yeah, now that I think about it, I was looking at the weather for Durango, but we're 50 miles north and 6,000 feet up, so it's going to get pretty cold. And normally that's not a big problem, except I didn't pack any pants. Actually, it's not totally true. Here's why. A year earlier, my wife Diana and I, we went to Australia, and I'm on the airplane, and the flight attendant comes up and starts to get something out of the overhead compartment, but fails to remember that items might have shifted upon takeoff. And so a very big, very full bottle of water falls out, nails me in the head, my Coke goes flying all over the place. He felt so bad, he went to first class and got me one of those really nice toiletry bags that they give away, and it had like shaving cream and razors and soap, a pajama set. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not a tall man. My pant size is 30-24. These pajamas were more of a extra large, one size fits all kind of thing, but they were really comfortable. So I packed them. Here's a tip. If you go camping and want everyone to know that you don't know what you're doing, sport some gray Qantas Airline pajama pants that run well past your feet. The next morning, we get up to summit a 14er, which is something I never thought I would do. And I didn't do it. We're a little over halfway up, and my best friends and my wife, they come to me and they said, we've been talking. We're concerned for you. We're gonna go. You stay here. They're gone. I'm like, this is great. And I'm walking around the side of this mountain that I don't want to be on. It's raining. I'm freezing. I'm starving because I didn't pack any food for the day because I thought a better use of my bag space would be to pack a French press. Eventually, they come back, we get back to the campsite, but like it's full on raining now, and it's just like not stopping, no end in sight. That night, the next morning, we can't do anything. So I'm just like, you guys want to watch a movie? They're like, how are we going to watch a movie? I'm like, I brought my iPad. So all four of us get in this three-man tent, and we're watching the movie Silver Linings Playbook, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the worst movie experience of my life. And then Gary starts farting in the tent. I'm like, that is the worst movie experience of my life. So I'm like, that's it, guys. I'm done. I just want to get on the train, buy one of those sandwiches from the food cart, and go home. I get on the train. I go to the food cart. They're out of sandwiches. I will never go camping again. The end.